Consider supporting the work of Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian by becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep the resource alive and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/NAHblog to learn more and make a contribution of $3, $5, $10, or $20 per month. Again, that's patreon.com/NAHblog. You can start or stop anytime. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I'm your host, Relando Tompkins-Jones. I'm a social worker, social justice educator, writer, organizational consultant, and now podcaster who works to build more equitable and inclusive communities. I am also an aspiring humanitarian. My experiences have shown me that in the process of working for social justice outwardly, it's also important for us to continue to critically examine ourselves, shedding attitudes and behaviors that are oppressive to make room for those that are more inclusive, just, and humanitarian. What is an aspiring humanitarian, you ask? When I say humanitarian, I don't mean humanitarian in the harmful sense of placing ourselves in the role of a benevolent hero who's there to swoop in and save others. I mean dedicating one's life, time, and energy to honoring the ways that our destinies are intertwined. It's about accepting the lifelong pursuit to become more humane to those around us, with the recognition that we lose important parts of our humanity when we allow and enable the suffering of others. It means acknowledging our many contradictions and complications and aspiring to do more, aspiring to do better. It means acknowledging that systems of oppression exist by design and not by accident, and working towards an individual and collective transformation that includes an unshakable belief that our society's safety, viability, survival, and ability to thrive is only as secure as our most marginalized community members. Since 2011, my blog, Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian, has been a place where I've written and curated content on issues of equity and social justice. Through using written word, film, and video, and other forms of media for social justice education, I hope to continue to expand and enrich the narratives about social issues that face our society and to find ways to take action while encouraging others to do the same. Today, the blog and now the podcast is for others who share a passion for that same journey. No matter who you are, where you come from, what your identities are, or what area of work you're in, there's room enough for all of us in this work, and I hope that engaging with the podcast or the blog can move you closer to discovering or reaffirming your answers to the questions that you may have about how you can best be of service. Thank you for choosing the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I'm your host, Relando Tompkins-Jones. So in this week's episode, I want to talk about ripples. And what I mean when I say ripples, I'm thinking about those people who we've come across on our life's journey that because of their involvement and investment within us, or because of their influence and participation in our lives, their actions have created a rippling effect similar to what would happen if one was to throw a stone in the water and the ripples that would result from that action. Another piece of important information of context that I'm also thinking about when I talk about ripples for this week's episode is I'm focusing on those ripples, those folks in our lives who have impacted our lives in a positive way. So one of the examples or one of the people that I'm thinking of in this moment is a former statistics professor of mine. And so at the time of this recording, it's been several years, but he continues to be someone who I continue to think about and appreciate the time and investment and experiences that I had as a result of learning from him. So in thinking back, I was fortunate enough to attend his memorial, although briefly. And even though it was a sad occasion, the room would occasionally swell with laughter as a friend, a colleague, a family member, or a student would share fond memories of him. So I was among some of his former students in the room, and although I did not go up to speak during that time where folks would go up to the front and stand and share fond memories of their experiences with him, I found truth in the common thread of their sharing that attested to just how crucial, how critical of an influence he was to their development, and how invested and instrumental his involvement was toward helping each of them to graduate and to move on to the next stage of their personal and professional lives. He'll always be a part of my story. Although not so much these days, there was a time when I found statistics to be extremely intimidating. However, he loved that work, which helped out a lot. And he had a way of explaining the information that made it extremely relevant to real life social conditions, which really fit with my learning style. As I think about those days when I was completing my undergraduate degree in social work, one of the things that I really learned about myself at that time was that it fit really well with my learning style. It was really supportive and helpful to me to be able to directly apply and translate some of the things that I was learning about into real life social situations. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I really gravitated toward the field of social work as well, is because of the practicality and combining the theory and the understanding of social problems with those action steps and ways to support and intervene. And so one of the things that I really appreciated about my former professor here was just that he had a way of explaining things that were very complex, but putting them into real life social conditions, and made it really easy to apply that information. And so I still carry that with me today. So because of that, because of the training, because of the ways that I learned from him, I'm able to read statistics. I'm able to question and challenge and have a better sense of the types of stories that data is trying to tell. And I have a better sense of thinking about how power influences that, and just to be more critical and informed about different statistics that we hear or that I come across when it comes to thinking about social problems and the impact that's had on marginalized groups. So I still carry that with me today. So his influence and investment helped to change my perception of an experience from one that felt like a huge obstacle, because initially I was really overwhelmed, I can remember at that time, and intimidated by using, programs like SPSS and other things. So he helped to transform my perception from something that felt really overwhelming and beyond reach in some ways, to an opportunity that supported me in developing that into a valuable skill set that, if used properly, could really benefit groups large and small for the better. So, like some of the other professors I've had who've influenced me in positive ways, I think of him occasionally and recognize that some of his dedication to his students has rubbed off on me in terms of how I engage with my own students these days. As much as he'll stay a part of my story of becoming, I can remember as I stood there and listened to the stories about the contributions and impacts he's made during his life, I also found myself wondering about what people he might have carried with him. If there are people who are part of his story that influenced how he taught or approached his own work. Those are unanswered questions that I would have loved to have known had we had the time. I didn't stay to the end of the memorial. I couldn't. But as I walked out of the building, I can remember walking out of the building and towards the parking lot. For a moment, I found myself at this thought provoking intersection of sounds. So behind me, I hear the sounds of laughter. And I think to myself, someone must have been sharing another funny memory, because there are a lot of instances there where people were sharing really fond and funny memories of him. So that's what I heard behind me. But in front of me, I heard the sounds of a busy street, cars roaring past, horns honking, and the sounds and sights of people moving around town, living their lives, doing whatever was on their agenda that day. One of the reasons it was so thought provoking was because I recognized that in that moment, at the same time, those of us who were gathered there that day, we focused our energy and intentions on remembering his life and the lives that he impacted. At that same time, the busyness of life, of business as usual, was bustling just outside as much as it had ever been. I felt sandwiched between slow, deliberate reflection and returning to a whirlwind of thoughts about deadlines, business, and other responsibilities. So time just keeps on moving. It doesn't wait, even if we want it to. One thing I'm reminded of currently, especially considering how quickly time passes, is the importance of being intentional about controlling the use of my own time in terms of how I'm using myself, and then also how I use my time in support of others and connecting with others in very meaningful ways. It was evident that my former professor's involvement had ripple effects on not just me, but many of the people there. And as I think about that, I feel like one of the ways we can honor those people in our lives who have impacted us so greatly, one of the ways we can honor those bridge builders in our lives is by being that person for someone else. So as I'm thinking about the ripples that he's made, I'll continue going about the work of making my own. And that's also my wish for you this week, is to think about the ripples. Think about the impacts that people you've met along the way have made in your life, the different contributions. And also, in addition to thinking about what's been done for you in terms of supporting your own growth and development, I also want you to think about, hey, how might I also be supporting others in a similar way? Or how might I also be supporting others in their growth and their development? How might I also be giving back? So that's my hope for you this week. Thanks again for choosing the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I look forward to engaging with you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To find show notes for this and additional episodes, visit podcast.notesfromanaspiringhumanitarian.com. Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian is a labor of love and will continue to be. Consider supporting the work of Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian by becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep this resource alive and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/NAHblog to learn more and make a contribution of $3, $5, $10, or $20 per month. Again, that's patreon.com/NAHblog. You can start or stop anytime. Thank you for joining me this week. Take care.